and I'm reading Gardens of the Moon, and I'm like, this isn't that bad. And then I would read Harrow the Ninth. I'm like, I got to take a break with some Malazan. Like, I need some light reading. So
I literally kept telling people this, and no one believed me. And I was like, trust me, it's so confusing.
Harrow the Ninth is more confusing than any Malazan book I've read, and I was just like getting real frustrated with it. And then I hit the point. I'm like, all right, this book is crazy, and it's really good. And then I read Nona, and I think I was burnt out, and I didn't really like Nona until the end, which I thought was incredible. So I'm really excited to reread. Also, just to shout out Jordan, who loves this series a ton, gave me and Alex a recap, and we were reading it, and we're like, oh, wow, we forgot a lot of this stuff. So it'll be fun to discuss it all and try and re-remember.
We read it in an alternate universe.
I was explaining to my husband how deranged I was coming off in our chat, just like the essays I was writing.
Right, it was not just a recap. There was recap. There were hard drives full of fan art. There is everybody's name, every name that is used for every character in every book.
I was doing that on the clock at work. I was like, oh, this is more important.
Literally all I said was, oh yeah, it's hard for me to keep straight the same names. And she's like, I got you.
Oh, so good. All right.
I was like, I could have used these while we were reading. I don't even think they would have spoiled anything for me. It's like they would have just been helpful. But
all right, Sarah.
All right, I'm Sarah. I recently came back to BookTube. I didn't think that I would be the most prolific person here. That I didn't make a video for 3 months, but I've made 2 in the last 3 weeks, so I guess that puts me ahead of the curve now.
Yeah, way ahead of us.
And I just finished Nona last month. I read Gideon 2 months ago, and then read Harrow, and then read Nona, and loved them so much that Kyle was like, the only other person that I've talked to who liked them this much is Jordan. So let's see if she wants to talk about it.
Well, Alex, Kyle, and I have been talking about doing a stream for this for a long time. And then Kyle was like, hey, Sarah liked them. Let's go ahead and do that stream.
I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of not intimidated by doing this stream, but it was just one of those streams that I was like, I really wanted to do. And as we were reading the series, I was like, oh my God, we need to talk about this. But every time I was like, I don't know.
Yeah, it does
change. Talk about?
It does change my perception a little of like people will just message me and be like, hey, do you want to do a Song of Ice and Fire stream? I'm like, yeah, I'm ready in 10 minutes. You want to go now? Like, I just don't need any prep. And Dandelion Dynasty. But that's how Jordan is with this series. And for me, I'm like, can I get 3 months of prep time? Like, I just need to review my notes.
I mean, to be fair, I had also forgotten a lot of stuff. I was going through a reading slump, and I was like, let me just reread Locked Tomb because it's a comfort read for me, which says a lot about me as a person. And so I listened to all of them in the past month, and I just finished Nona today. So a lot of that recap was just because I just finished it.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot you catch on reread. I hope we get a release date for Electo soon because I want to do a reread, but I don't want to do a reread and then just lose it all.
Yeah, too early. We need to appropriately time the reread.
Yeah, I've now read Gideon 3 times, Harrow twice, and Nona twice, I think. So I feel like I have a good grasp at this point.
I think Gideon specifically will be really fun on the reread just because it was the first book and I didn't really know what to expect. And even 60% of the way into that book, I was like, I don't really know.
I didn't love Gideon. The first time I read
feel
Gideon,
about it, I liked it a lot, but it was odd.
First time I read Gideon, I gave it 3 stars. I didn't really like it that much. But I think it's because I listened to it and just couldn't get into
the name. Yeah, the names must have really got you.
And then
like
so
7 heroes.
So when I reread it physically, liked it a lot more, and then I did Harrow, and then by the big reveals of Harrow, I was like, I'm sold, I'm in. So yeah, it takes. That's why whenever I tell people if you like Gideon, even marginally, try Harrow. Just give it a shot.
Just jump in.
I do think.
I think it depends on who you're going to enjoy in the series too. I love Gideon from the first chapter because I love Gideon. Just everything about her, I love her. I love her, and so I love the first book. And if you, depending on which character you fall in love with, it's gonna, I think, influence how you
Yeah.
feel about the books, because Gideon helps you fall in love with Gideon, but the second book really makes you fall in love with Harrow as a character.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
just really, where's your heart?
Yeah.
Gideon is like a really good book. But maybe on reread I will rescind this. But my perception is like it's a good book, and like I think from reading it, I'm like Tamsin Muir is like a good writer. But so I didn't give any book in this series 5 stars. I gave Harrow 4. It was maybe sliding close to a 4.5, and I gave Nona 3. But if I was to point out, get over yourselves, all of you. If I was to point out some of the best writers like in modern fantasy sci-fi, I would definitely include Tamsin Muir, even if like my ratings don't reflect that, because like she's such a good writer. Like she has such a good handle on tone and humor that she's trying to do, and like on plot, I mean definitely on plot, and like character voice. Like I feel like she's just very, very good at a lot of things, and a lot of the reasons why somebody might not like the series is because she's doing something they don't want versus like her doing anything poorly. Like I think she's top of her game in all of the things that she is doing. It's just whether or not you like that stuff.
That's true. So
Yeah,
when I love
totally
a book,
agree.
I like to go on BookTube and read and watch the 1-star reviews that people have done, just to, just to make myself feel good. So as I was watching people do 1-star reviews for Gideon, that was something that was consistent. People were like, I cannot say that Tamsin Muir is a bad writer, because it's just not true. I just hated everything about this book, which I think Gideon is going to be a pretty polarizing book, and The Locked Tomb is probably going to be a pretty polarizing series. But I don't think that you can, at least I don't think most people are going to come in and be like, wow, what a crap writer this person is.
I think it's like it's almost a similar kind of theme in a couple of my favorite series, where it's just so out there in some ways that it's not written to appeal to like a bunch of different people. It's like very specific. Yeah. The author's doing one thing and doing it really, really well, and then the people that like it end up like usually really loving it. But yeah, I totally agree. Her perspective, her character voice, and control of perspective, especially when you go from book to book to book, is so impressive. And the way, like every single character in the series is so different and unique, and they all have very different character voices and personalities. And I mean, these books aren't long, but it's just like how much she's able to pack in there while constantly building out this plot that is so just ridiculously intricate and also confusing while you're going through, but as it all comes together is just like impressive as hell. Yeah. It's just
especially that's like one of the things that makes it so good on a reread is you start picking up on things that she's been dropping from the beginning. Like I messaged Kyle and Alex when I got to this part in Gideon on my reread when Dulcinea tells Gideon that she's been dying for 10,000 years. And Gideon just kind of like blows it off as she's sick, but it's actually that she's Kithurea and she's a lictor that has been dying for 10,000 years. So like she planned everything from the start. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, agreed. I'll say the things that I like about The Locked Tomb, to me, this is a comparison that makes a lot of sense, but the books are also nothing alike. So the things that I love about The Locked Tomb are the things that I love about The Dark Tower. And I don't necessarily think that those series have very much in common, but I
see what you're saying already, but
the skeletons of them are so similar. You've got like this weird post-apocalyptic world. You've got these remnants of the time that's gone by. These references that feel really anachronistic, like the way that they talk, the things that are present, they just feel like they're coming out of nowhere, that they don't fit with the timeline. And so you get this weird melding of like pop culture and strange references with science fiction and fantasy. And it's just so weird. And I love it. I loved it in The Dark Tower and I loved it in The Locked Tomb. It's the only series that has ever given me that, like since reading The Dark Tower. And that's probably one of the reasons that I like it so much.
Dark Tower and Locked Tomb are the two weirdest things I've ever read in my life. Like they're both like I'm just like, what the fuck am I reading?
Just constantly.
How does possibly make sense?
So do we want to do this like book by book and talk about like each of the big reveals in each of the books and
let's
do
it that way?
I think we should.
I just want to tell Paul I disagree with that comment. That's the reason Harrow is not a 5-star for me, is that I feel like
And you're wrong for that.
I'm just
Paul,
like
I agree.
70% of the book were just in utter chaos of confusion. We couldn't have trimmed that to like
Yeah.
62%, Tamsin.
No,
I don't
it was
agree.
perfect.
No.
How? But
Because when you reread it, you'll see all of the hints that she's been dropping from the
Cut some
beginning.
hints.
No.
Now that you're smarter, Kyle, you'll know.
That
You can-
is true.
Okay.
yeah,
so,
I think we should go book by book.
all right. So
Okay.
Gideon. Basic plot is Gideon is trying to get away from the Ninth House, who has been keeping her basically captive since she was little. Harrow stops that, convinces her to be her cavalier to go try to become a lictor, and they go to Canaan House, where there's a necromancer and a cavalier from each house competing to be a lictor. There's a big trial. There's a murder mystery. People keep showing up dead. And then the big reveals at the end were that Kithrea was Dulcinea the whole time, and she was the one killing people. And that to become a lictor, you have to kill your cavalier and take on their soul, which gives you power. And Gideon kills herself so that Harrow can become a lictor, and she does. So Harrow and Ianthe are the two that become lictors at the end. That is the briefest synopsis I could give.
Also,
That was
now
great synopsis.
we read these books, except for Sarah. We read these books in February. And we're like, immediately as soon as we finished, we're like, we need to do a live stream, and we waited till October to be seasonally appropriate.
Yeah, that's why we did it.
It's a good time of year.
So Gideon's reveals, compared to the reveals of the other two books, feel a lot tamer, but they're still really big. Like learning that you have to kill your cavalier, and also like the slow burn romance that Gideon and Harrow have been building to, and then Gideon's like,
"There's no lesbians in the first book. Get over it."
I will fight Jake to the death for that.
This is like when it's not just Jake. I've watched multiple videos where they're like, I don't understand where the lesbians come from. I'm like,
no, okay, so real quick, I think it's because the word lesbians is like over sexualized when people talk about it. So because they're not actually in a relationship, people are like, well, there's only like one clear lesbian because you're in Gideon's perspective, so you know she's a lesbian. And then like I guess like so I stand by what I said in the DMs, which is that like I could see somebody just not picking up on all of that, but also like it's pretty clear.
People need lessons in subtext. This is all I'm saying.
And people don't even get text, Sarah. Like,
you can't tell me that the pool scene happened.
The pool scene is when people need to be like, come on.
Yeah, like the fact that Jake read the pool scene and was like, seems straight to me.
We should just call this chat calling out Jake. Jake is
really good friends. They're very good friends.
Yes.
Also, the genocide of the Ninth House and all that whole
I was gonna say that was actually the biggest reveal to me.
Yeah,
that was an excellent segue. I was like, what does genocide have to do with lesbians?
Alex is about to be canceled.
That is an inflammatory statement.
Well, you see.
Yes,
but
so
that was a reveal.
Harrow's parents killed off all the children of the Ninth House so that she was a strong necromancer. And then they decided what they did was evil and wanted them all to kill themselves. They killed themselves. And Harrow was like, I'm good. And has been puppeting their bodies ever since. Gideon didn't die from said mass killing. And that's a later reveal for later books. But Gideon did not die from that.
The one reveal that I got, and I didn't get it 100%, but I was like, Harrow's parents are dead, and I didn't know how, I didn't know why, I didn't know any of the circumstances. I mean, that was just wild when we learned. But I was just like, Harrow's parents aren't real. Like this is fake news, as some would say. Yeah,
Gideon points it out. I think like halfway through the book, they like have a confrontation, and she's like, "I know you've been puppeting your parents around," and Harrow's like, "Yeah, I have been."
It's like, all right.
Also, I feel like Harrow as a person. Like, how old was she when this happened? Was it like 11, 12 or something?
Yeah.
She was like 10 when she went into the tomb.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was shortly
relatively after that.
Right? Imagine puppeting your own parents from the time that you're a child. Oh dear.
Wild.
That's just wild. So
she
since
is.
we're in Gideon, before anybody decides to move on, I'm going to talk about my problem with this series, which is the names are absolutely ridiculous. And it's not that the names are ridiculous; it's that there's no consistency. And I stand by this, and I will on my reread. I will on every read. Everybody come at me. It's the
But
worst.
book 4 is
Because
not out yet.
it doesn't matter. I know what I know about book 1, which is that there's no interior idea of who calls who what. Like, it's just like, so you will call someone their first name, their last name, their title, and their house name, just like flipping a coin. And
I feel like it doesn't even get bad until
It does.
Harrow. I feel like Gideon
no, it's
is
bad. It's bad in Gideon. It was. Listen, I have read so many large fantasy books and kept everyone straight or everybody important. And for Gideon, there's like 9 characters you have to keep straight, but it feels like 72 because everybody has 5 names. And I'm like, it does get a lot worse in Harrow. But I'm like, this is just her being like, how can I be extra confusing? And it's not. There's no logic to it. If it was like, oh, Harrow always calls people by their last names, except when they're close to her, and Gideon calls people by their first name or their house number. Like, but it's not. It's literally just like everybody. It's like she made a rule for herself. She can't use the
How you
same name
feeling there,
twice in
Trey?
a row. And I'm like, no.
I just feel like this is like life. Like when people have nicknames, last names, titles,
No, it's
people
not.
throw that
No, it's
out
not. No,
time.
it's not. It is absolutely not. It's
I
100% not. Nobody's ever done that in their life.
I think
You
it
have
is.
never met. No,
I
you
think
haven't.
it is.
I'm not-
You're not
I'm-
going to convince me.
You
You
listen.
can yell.
Okay.
I actually like the flailing. The more excited you get, the happier I am. So
I
I think you are incorrect.
Okay, so listen. When people have nicknames for people, they will call them that nickname.
It sounds
unless
like
they're
Kyle was confused and he's sad about it. So he's making it everybody else's problem.
Let me get through my points, Sarah. Go not watch Hamilton, okay? So if you have a nickname, people are gonna, that person who calls you that nickname is gonna call you that nickname unless there's a reason not to. Like if somebody's like, like being dumb, you might call them their real name, or if you really need to get their attention, you might call. But it's just you stick. People have neural pathways of how they refer to someone.
People don't know each other long enough in this book to establish neural pathways. Okay, let's get that clear. Those things don't happen in 72 hours.
If you meet a human being and you're like, "Hi, my name is Bob," your neural pathway is that guy's name is fucking Bob. Okay,
you can't just say the word neural pathway and expect that the people who don't understand neuroscience are just going to assume you're right.
That's not what I was doing.
These are big words.
I'm just upset, so I'm using words that okay. But I feel like it's self-explanatory. Like the way that you think about somebody is going to be consistent unless you actually stop and consider how you're going to refer to them differently. So in moments of casual conversation, you are going to talk how you already know. Like right now, I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. I'm just saying words. So words I don't normally use are not going to come out of me right now. I'm just going to say neural pathway without thinking about it because that's what I'm thinking about. That's a neural pathway.
I do think that it changes in the situation. I think that they use different ones when they're upset, when they're, when they know them well, when they don't. I think it's just there's a lot of people who know each other in various ways, and we're getting Gideon's perspective.
I don't agree, but we can move on now that I've aired my grievances.
That's okay. That's fine.
I just never had a chance to get it all out. I just complained to Jordan and Alex about it. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. What are you doing, Jordan? Oh,
I'm frozen.
Is someone frozen? I feel like
Jordan's frozen.
Everything's really laggy for. Okay,
yeah.
Everything's lagging for me, and so I was trying to follow that conversation.
It's Kyle's rage. It has infiltrated the stream. It's now the connection. The connection is vibrating.
It's all wavy too, so the pixel can't keep up. My wife's probably in the other room. Like, why are you yelling?
Why are you this mad? It's only been 4 minutes.
Well, Alan will never read this series, so someone has to get upset about it.
That's true. I've sent so many messages to Alan being like, you will hate this, but I need to tell you this part because you would appreciate this concept, even though I know you would hate this book.
Alan would get,
I think it would
12 and a half pages. I think he would make it roughly as far as Evie.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Gideon the Ninth is a good book beyond that stuff. I do like the setup to that, and I like that how it gets us involved in the story in a way that's basically a murder mystery. So people have something to latch onto before things go buck wild for the rest of the series.
Jordan, my internet just lost its mind, she said. So hopefully she'll be back soon.
Yeah.
But yes, I agree. I don't read a lot of mystery books, which is maybe also why I liked this one a lot. You're back.
My internet lost its goddamn mind. Oh, and Kyle's gone.
I'm not gone. Am I frozen?
Oh no.
Oh, there's definitely a lag in this stream because I feel like I keep like seeing.
No, oh no. One thing that I did see people say was that they felt like Gideon, the character, was edgy, and that did not improve. And I will say that when I started Gideon, I did not know if I was going to like it immediately because I was like, okay, I will like this. And oh my gosh, now Alex.
Where did Alex?
We can't keep everybody here.
I'm Alex now, and then Alex is going to be me, and then we're going to swap consciousness. But then actually, one of our bodies is going to be in a tomb somewhere. So.
How tall are you, Kyle?
Not tall enough. I'm as tall that when you see me, you'd be like, "That's how tall people are."
I am of average height.
Mm-hmm. I'm 5'6", almost 5'7".
You're not even as tall as me, Kyle.
I'm
All
short.
right.
I am literally. Alex could use me as a basketball if he was like if he was playing against the Looney Tunes and he really needed to make a point. He just
Space Jam 3.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway.
So with Gideon,
Yes, I was talking about Gideon being edgy. I do feel like because I don't love characters like that, and that is why I did not enjoy the second Mistborn novel. But one thing that I appreciated about Gideon is she is sarcastic and she does have that like edgy sheen. But I actually think, and this is contrary to some of the 1-star reviews that I saw, I think that she's really like there are parts of her that you're not expecting from the initial view you get of her. Like she is very warm to the young kids when they go to the house. She lets herself get very attached to people, unlike Harrow, who's very aloof and like standoffish. She actually does feel connections to other people, and she wants to be nice to them, and she wants to help them, and she wants to get them through, which is not a super edgy personality quirk. So I feel like she's got that like exterior armor that she probably had to build up living where she lived, but she's a nice person underneath it all.
Resident Sanderson fan jumping in at the slander. I'm going to join the slander though. Plot twist. The reason that Gideon is better than Zane is because Zane is terrible and Brandon Sanderson should feel ashamed of himself for writing such a bad character.
Zane sucks.
And Gideon is 3-dimensional and actually well written. So that's why it doesn't feel that way.
Zane
Very true.
pits.
I feel like with this whole book, I feel like going into it, because Kyle, you had already read it before I read it. Jordan,
yes,
obviously you had read it. And I wanted, you guys were like, okay, it's going to be confusing. Just brace yourself for whatever happens. And so I think from the beginning, I was kind of bought into the fact that, okay, I'm going to have to at least read this whole book to, if I decide if I want to keep going or not. And I also was kind of second guessing everything I was reading, which was like a very interesting reading experience. Cause I was like the first time through the series, I didn't understand what was going on, but I was still second guessing everything that was going on. But I agree. Like the thing I loved about that first book was the characters and Gideon primarily because we get her point of view the most in that book, obviously. And they were just so, like I was saying earlier, they're just, all the characters, but especially the ones that she uses in the different POVs are so multi-layered. And what you get of them at the beginning obviously isn't what you come to know them as you continue to read through the series. So I think, I don't know. I just, it's one of those reasons why I'm just like, okay, try book 2. If you in any way, shape, or form like book 1, because there's so much more to unpack, and also it's so different. Like I feel like each one of the books in the series are so different that it's hard to judge the series based on that first book, which almost does it a disservice if you're not a fan of the first book. Which is, I mean, I have the same thing with Dark Tower. Like everyone who like, oh, I hate the Gunslinger. I'm like, okay, try the second book.
Gunslinger's so boring.
It is not, but I understand.
So
it
boring.
is very mid. But let's not get derailed
If
here.
you like if you think that the first book has good world building potential, and you're like, this could be so cool, it is. Just keep going. Like
it's cooler than you think.
I will
wait.
say, like, I mean, look, Tamsin always has like her brand of sense of humor. It's not going to change. And Gideon, the rest of the novel, does still have like I remember the thing that made me laugh the most in Gideon is just that Gideon randomly makes a Mean Girls reference, and I just like was not expecting that.
Yeah.
And I literally laughed out loud. I just wasn't expecting it. So if you like this book is referencing Mean Girls, like that can be a lot much. So
I mean, like,
said,
if you're like in the like if you are on social media frequently, you'll find that there are so many meme references throughout all of these books. Just many times that she just references random memes.
You just reread. Do you remember what the Mean Girls reference is? Like she's like drunk or something. And she's like, you can't just blank Harrow. But I can't remember what it is. But anyway, what I was gonna say while you guys look for it is the first like 3 chapters of Gideon has the edgiest humor. Like I swear to God, it's just like them having edgy zingers back and forth for like 9 pages. And I feel like on the one hand, that's like gatekeeping itself because it's like if you don't like this, bow out now. But I also feel like it's so concentrated there that like because I hated it, I was like no. But then I kept going, and it's like more slim doses. I actually kind of like it. So
okay, so it's like the part where she says you can't just ask people why they're white.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. You can't just ask people.
I know, but like, it's a variation. It's not the exact quote. It's like you can't just ask people why they're dead or something like that.
Why they want to be a lictor.
Oh yeah, I don't know, but it was good.
Yeah, that is good. And any funny book is going to be like that, right? Like you either like the jokes and the sense of humor or you don't. And I think that's why really great series like Discworld don't work for everybody because you either find things funny from the way that an author writes them or you don't.
Jordan and her damn first law takes.
Right? Same thing. Like, I think Joe Abercrombie's hilarious, but if you don't find his sense of humor funny, you're in for a bad time reading that series.
Oh my God. There were parts. I just finished Age of Madness, and there were parts of Age of Madness that I was laughing. So
funny. Like, it's really sad that you didn't make it to the short stories, Jordan, because there is a character in one of the short stories who's a lot like Gideon.
I haven't quit.
I won't let her quit.
I have a little hatred checked out from the library right now.
Yes.
So I'm reading it next.
The short stories can be read at any time too. So if you do decide you like them, you can just go back and read some of the short stories. I agree. I think you would like the stories that Sarah's talking about.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I just decided I read the one of the standalones and then half of another one, and I was like, no, I'm good. Anything else for Gideon before we move on to Harrow? I feel like there's a lot more to talk about
basically
with Harrow and
Nona. The pool
everything
scene.
Gets turned
the
on
pool
its head.
scene and Gideon is what makes that book really, really click.
So good.
I feel like.
So good.
Also, did you guys know they're lesbians? Like, I just had no idea.
Why didn't they advertise
really
more?
That
scene
really
is really, really good, and I feel like that's when you realize Harrow breaks down her defenses a little bit and like gets vulnerable for the first time. Not enough Ordis and Gideon.
I love Ordis. He's so good.
And it feels like a really natural progression of the like enemies to friends, and will that continue on to them being together? Who knows what is going to happen in the last book, but it was at least believable for them to go from hating each other, and you believe that they hate each other. It's not like one of these like these are just people who are having a mild disagreement. Like no, they do loathe each other.
They hate each other,
and then they trust each other, and then they care about each other, and it feels like it builds really naturally.
Also, Tamsin Muir is so good at like pining in general. Like all of the lines that she gives each of them about like I am undone without you and things like that. Like they're always just like so.
The lines.
I just find them melodramatic. Sorry guys, I'm gonna be a hater again. I'm just like,
no.
They're not.
In fact, I think the whole series is melodramatic. I just think that it works a lot of the time for me.
Yeah,
it does because it feels like operatic in the space opera way.
Well, and we learn a lot more in Nona, but there's so many like biblical ties and biblical references, especially towards the end of Nona, that make it feel like a big drama. But we'll get to that when we get to Nona. All right.
So basically take everything you thought you knew.
Yeah.
And then open book 2.
Crumple it up, throw it in the trash.
What are the interludes for Harrow? The interludes for Nona are the like lessons from
they're the John chapters. The Harrow ones are her flashbacks to being at Canaan House.
Okay.
Where she's misremembering.
Nona's a dreams.
Yeah, Nona's are dreams. So Harrow, let's see how I can do this synopsis.
Shit's wild.
Yeah. Harrow starts with basically the reader and Harrow has no idea what's going on. She's just woken up after being asleep for like 2 weeks or something. And Ianthe Tridentarius, who is a lictor now, gives her a letter that she wrote to herself that explains to trust Ianthe to basically take care of her. They're both lictors. They're both on the Mithraeum, which is where God and his lictors live. They learn that there are resurrection beasts that they're trying to defeat that are basically the souls of all the planets that God killed when he did the resurrection. And so they're basically learning how to be lictors and stuff, but there's a resurrection beast coming right now. And Harrow doesn't remember anything. Like, all of her memories from the first book are completely different than what we read. Her cavalier was Ortis, who was supposed to be her cavalier at the beginning of Gideon. And there's a sleeper that's going around killing people with like a shotgun through Canaan House. And and Kithorea's body is on the Mithraeum and is reanimating, and nobody believes Harrow because they think she's nuts. But the big reveals of Harrow are that she had Ianthe help her give herself a lobotomy so that she didn't have to remember Gideon, because she couldn't live without her. But that messed with all of her other memories. And that was like the big reveal at the end of Harrow. And that God and Wake runs the Blood of Eden. They are Gideon's parents.
That was a good reveal, actually. I really like that reveal.
So Harrow's the book where we learn that like John found a way to separate, like to be a lictor, but also have. Yes.
We learned that he discovered perfect lictorhood.
Yeah.
Before he made everybody else kill their best friend.
Yes. He knew all along.
Dr. Evil.
Secret.
He knew all along and then convinced them all you had to kill them. And that's why. So then Mercy Morn tries to kill John. Her and Augustine have been planning it for a long time. She goes to kill him. She like basically blows him up into like atoms of blood. And
good scene.
And then he like just comes back together, kills her, and makes everyone swear their fealty. And Augustine will not. And then Augustine drags a whole Mithraeum into the river. Ianthe goes and saves John, and Augustine falls into the stoma, which is like hell, basically.
Fucking Ianthe.
I want to see Tamsin's notes when she puts this together. Like,
old of you to assume she has notes.
Yeah.
It's like that. It's like that meme of It's Always Sunny where the guy's like this and the board's like.
I sent that to our group chat, but it had the ninth.
I would just like to say that Harrow the Ninth has my favorite scene that I've ever read in a book, which is when Harrow is so deep in her weird, like, psychosexual grief spiral, and she's not sleeping, and she's just like everything. She's psychotic, and someone's trying to actually kill her because one of the lictors is trying to kill her, and she doesn't know how to get back at him. So she cuts out her own bone, puts it in a soup, has him eat it, and then explodes them from the inside. I was like, this is literally the best thing I've ever read. Nothing will ever top this.
Also, Ianthe's description of how to make soup gets me every time. You just burn some onions and put some water in it with some salt. And I was like, well, that is soup. So
there you go.
Easy.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? I will never forget that as long as I live.
Oh,
like,
I remember the scene you're talking about. I don't remember Ianthe's description
of soup.
Because Harrow's like, how do I make soup? God wants me to make dinner for everyone. And she says it's easy. Yeah. You just burn some onions and put some water and salt.
You know, speaking of names, which we weren't, but it reminded me. I actually spent a large portion of Harrow the Ninth not knowing God and John were the same person. Like a large portion. Like 67.5% of the book. I finally messaged Jordan. I was like, is God and John the same person? Oh, that changes this whole book. Like,
I writing down God's names made me almost agree with you because God has so many names. The Emperor of the Nine Houses, God, John Gaius, Teacher, Creator, Resurrector, First Reborn, Emperor Undying, Necrolord Prime, and King Undying.
And they just use them differently.
They just
no
use them
reason.
all.
Yeah.
Like, why call him John ever? Like, it actually doesn't make any sense.
That's his
Unless
name.
it's like,
Because it's funny.
It's
That's
hilarious.
okay, but that's
And
not
he
the
looks
context they
average.
use him all the time. Like, sometimes they're just like God. They're being deferential. But then they call him
God.
teacher. So when is he teacher and not God?
It's.
I think I'm gonna make a chart of this. When I reread
Yeah.
it, this is what I'm
When
gonna
I
be
reread
doing.
it, I'm going to too. And you're going to be like, I think I see your point, Kyle.
I will never.
You would
ever
never say that.
Literally never.
You could see
I
me
feel
bone
like-
marrow soup and threaten to explode me from the inside, and
be
I'd be
like-
like, you know what? I'm
I'd be
willing
like,
to die.
Sarah, I think you have good kids. Like, they're really good, like, nice kids. And you'd be like,
They're evil.
You are
Did you
wrong.
not hear the story about my daughter giving me exposure therapy by hiding whale toys in my coat pocket? Come on.
wonderful.
I remember we were reading this and we were trying to share theories because Jordan was just like, "Oh, what do you guys think? What do you guys think's going on?" And the entire time I was just like, "Is any of this even happening?" I was like, literally,
Wilder and
I was
Wilder.
like,
Alex
the
is like, does
entire-
Harrow exist?
I was literally like, is this real? I was like, is the whole first book not
Alex's
real?
predictions or like theories were wild.
Because the further we got in the book, I was just like, what is going on? And it just got more. I was like, Harrow's not a real person. This is just some deranged
I think
dream
that's
that a
why.
character in the first book's having or something.
I think that's why it works that you don't know what's going on for so long because you're just constantly you're like, I don't know what's going on. You're just constantly second guessing everything that's going on. I think that I love
Yeah.
it for it.
I think it balances a tight line too, because I feel like because it goes so long, the payoff has to be. I mean, it doesn't have to be, but you want it to
It
be
should be,
as good
yeah.
as it could, as
Yeah.
good as it can. And I definitely felt like with the second book, which is why that book is probably definitely my favorite in the three that are out right now. It's just the payoff is so
Yeah.
excellent and
And
satisfying.
it's-
I also
Yeah,
think,
I do think the payoff
the,
makes it worth it for sure.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think the payoff is also so good because of all of the hints that are left along the way, like especially with like the lobotomy thing and Gideon existing, the fact that like whenever she says Ordis talking about Gideon the First, everyone looks at her funny and they're like, it's pointed out that people are like, what are you talking about? But no one really corrects her. But anytime somebody says Gideon's name to her, her ears and nose start bleeding.
Right.
That would be
And
fun
you're
to
like-
catch on reread.
You're like, why is she bleeding? Like, what is happening? So like, and there's so many of those instances where like, and like as we start getting closer to the reveal and she's in that bubble, she's basically just going through different scenarios of what she remembers, and Abigail Pint is there and she keeps saying, Harrow, that isn't what happened, and then basically it starts another memory, and each time it gets weirder and weirder, and she just keeps saying, Harrow, that isn't what happened, and it's just like bonk. Like that's when all the reveals start coming in, and it's just so well done.
It is.
This is
so
giving
well
me flashbacks to headaches. I actually remember like using all of my brain cells. I was like,
Every
all right,
single-
guys, the vacation's over. All these guys we sent on furlough because we were reading Malazan. We need to bring it back.
We need all the troops. This is true. The part of Harrow that got me is when you get it from Harrow's perspective, and you can see how broken up she is about not having Gideon, that she would like cut this memory out rather than deal with the grief. And then as soon as Gideon gets back, her response is, you hate me so much that you couldn't even stand to have me as part of you. And I was like,
Oh yeah.
I gave my life for you and you didn't even want it.
That was a good line. Also, speaking of Tanzanier's like writing ability, when it's like Gideon as Harrow, creme de la creme. Like 10
so
out of 10.
good.
Oh,
When
yeah.
she's trying to wake
First time?
Harrow up. When she's trying to wake Harrow up and she's like just saying the most outlandish shit, and she's like, maybe you are dead. So good. Oh, and
I need to reread. This
another-
has made me
Yeah.
really like actively want to reread.
I'm very
Another-
excited to reread. I want the release date of the last book.
I
Don't
know.
get me
Um,
started.
so
Don't
annoying.
get me
I-
started.
My,
Supposed to be
my
this
wife-
year.
It was supposed to come out this year.
Yeah.
2024, baby.
The year of the book.
Hopefully, because there's not usually like if it was 2024, you'd think they would at least have something.
Yeah,
announced.
they've
2024 is a big
released
year.
nothing.
I don't think it'll be first quarter. It'll probably be summer 2024 or late. But
I was thinking
My
fall,
guess is
yeah.
right
Fall.
around now next year, like
Yeah.
October.
Which will
Sounds
kill
right.
me, but
yeah.
It's a good time of year for it.
it
So
is
you
a
get to
perfect
reread
time of year.
it again, though.
I'll
and then you
probably
get to-
read it 2 or 3 times by next fall. Let's be real.
I agree with Tanner. I also love this, and I love how just literally 11 out of 10 crazy Mercy Morn is all the time.
I love her
Oh
so
my God,
much.
yeah.
I love her
She
so
is
much.
So over the top. It's-
Her emotions go from like I don't care about anything to absolute meltdown so fast, and she's perfection.
She's had 10,000 years of too much shit.
Yes. Also, just like it really, we don't think, or at least I didn't think about it much in Gideon, but it really is hammered home in this one that Harrow is a literal nun. Like it's there's so many times where she's just so uncomfortable about any, like God will just like put his hand on her hand and she'll be like, I hate this.
Right.
But then like the whole thing with like the distraction so she can go kill Ortis, where they end up just like
banned more.
when they just like start making out with John and she's like, I want to rip out my eyes. I was like girl, same.
I am shocked that this doesn't get banned more often, considering that there is a character who is posing as God, and then also that character is involved with involved in a threesome.
Yeah.
You understand how,
it up.
you understand they're not getting to that part.
That's true.
People who would ban it, they all tapped out way early. They hit the pool scene. John Thompson from the Missouri reaches the pool scene and he's like, you know, there's a bunch of lesbians in here, and he just closes the book and he just lets it out.
They don't make it. They don't make it in.
They just don't get there.
12 pages
You don't even
and
get
out.
God in the first book, so
Yeah, when they're like, Harrow, you'll just know when the distraction's happening. She is Jordan. She's just like, kill me.
and Ianthe has to be like, this is the distraction, let's go.
In like a year or two, like Harrow the Ninth and Gideon will be on like someone's ban list, and we'll have to be like, who narked? Who told them?
Who watched the stream?
This is the stream that told us. Linked.
Also, I forgot that she said she wanted to boil the Emperor in acid for eating peanuts, and that made me laugh out loud too. That was a really funny scene.
The whole book is so funny, and I think the humor also like helps with how like discombobulated
definitely.
everything feels. It's like, well, at least I'm laughing.
Yeah, like when I'm explaining Harrow the Ninth, because I stand by it being by far the most confusing book I've ever read. It's not within the scene. I don't understand what's going on. It's like, it's just like as if it's like you got hit on the head really hard. Like you were a cartoon character and you got hit on the head and you were just flashing all these scenes. Like within context, like they all make sense, but you're like, what is the mosaic I'm being
Right?
painted
What is
here?
happening?
Yeah. It's also, yes, exactly. And it's because it's this book too.
I think
That
the flashbacks are what make it the most confusing because
I agree. 'Cause
you're
I was
getting
like,
a whole new
literally this
retelling
is-
of the first book that is different.
It's like Harrow's literally doing everything that she didn't do
Mm-hmm.
in that first book, like talking to people that she didn't talk to and hanging out with people that she didn't like. Just
I do
What
love
is the
Ortis
reality?
though. Ortis in the flashbacks is so good.
And Ortis in the river also
Ortis
amazing.
in
yeah.
the river. Ortis in the river is phenomenal when he brings back what's his name and
Reciting his epic
yeah,
poetry,
he's
and Harrow's like,
I was like, I hate
Also-
this.
You know how hard it was for me to follow? Like near the end of the book, okay, I'm gonna get some of this wrong, but just the general gist, where it's like it was like Pyrrha. I don't know how to say her name. Pyrrha.
Pyrrha.
Yeah.
Yeah, she is Ortis, or no? She's Gideon.
She's Gideon Prime.
She's Gideon Prime, and then Gideon's dead, and then Gideon new Gideon is Harrow, and then John is there, and then Gideon is John's kid, and then also Wake's kid, who was
Who's
in
in
love with
Kitharea's
Gideon.
body.
Yeah, and I was just sitting
We
there
need
like,
a family tree.
The family tree wouldn't make sense though, is the thing.
so So whenever two people are talking, you just have to take a quick census and be like, who's in this scene?
Who's
Yeah.
where?
Really,
Like,
we know whose
redacted
bodies are in
names.
this scene, but who's actually here?
That's the thing too, because like we'll get to Nona, but everything, and they're just like, oh, Nona said this, and I just like constantly picturing a totally different character than who it actually is.
I
And it's the
didn't even
same-
realize it was Harrow right away, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
And Tanner,
But-
to your point,
yeah.
we will talk a lot more about Camilla and Calamities in Nona.
Because Nona's really their book for sure.
Yeah,
Like there's
for sure.
so much of them.
Yeah, they're like main characters in Nona.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nona, I think, is the funniest book of all three. Like they're all funny, but Nona is hilarious. There's so many funny parts in Nona.
I don't agree because I don't remember Nona, but
I just remember it being like a tonal shift.
Yes.
Like
The biggest tonal shift of the series for sure.
Yeah.
The
I could
first two
totally
feel very
see
similar.
my 3-star hitting up a 5-star on reread, but I was just I was like, why do I care about hot sauce and
Not so-
River
Nona
Phoenix
cares
or whatever this
No
guy's
one
name is?
cares.
And you love Nona, and she loves you.
Anyway, Harrow. Yeah, the whole book is just like I don't think I actually I've said many a time on my channel and streams, I do not go into books trying to figure out what's going on as I'm reading it, which was perfect for this series because I could not have if I tried. But I didn't start picking up on any of the I have to be hit over the head with plot reveals a lot of times, and it was especially true in this. When I got to the plot reveals of Harrow, I was like, what the actual fuck? I could have never, ever predicted any of this. It was buck wild. I saw nothing coming.
Okay, Jordan, I read the wiki for Nona before the stream because there were a couple things that I wanted to confirm, and there were things in the wiki where I was like, whoa, is that actually what that means?
You're doing the same thing.
That's what that was.
Like, one of the major reveals in Nona at the end, I was like, what? That happened? I was like,
I just didn't even
Do not
remember it.
remember that.
I was like, well, don't know.
yeah.
I think a lot
Outrageous.
of the reveals I got from Twitter. After I finished Nona, I went
That's fair.
I went to Twitter and was looking at other people's oh, did you notice this? Speaking of, oh no, that's for Nona. Never mind. I'll wait for Nona.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that Twitter helped me figure out because I didn't pick up on everything.
Yeah,
I liked when I finished the book, he sent like 40 tweet threads over like 100 tweets each of like all these fan theories. And I was like, oh my God.
Could you sum up?
Huh?
Just could you sum up is all?
It's
When you
just
see all the
of
tweets,
the fan theories.
yeah.
Yeah, hold
long
on, let me
didn't
find
read.
them. There's a lot.
Yeah, when I read a complicated series, I feel like I'm a pretty good reader most of the time. When I read A Song of Ice and Fire the first time, or what I'm reading Malazan, there are things that I miss, absolutely.
Mhm.
But when people are like, "Did you catch that blank?" There's at least an over 50% chance I'm going to say yes for a lot of things.
Mhm.
And this series, I was just like, oh, now I know how people feel when I'm just like, did you catch that blank was actually the son of blank and blank?
Yeah.
And then he went to when I'm talking to Jordan about A Feast for Crows, that's how I feel about it.
That's me explaining Nona to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks. You have to. I felt so good about this one because you have to explain almost every book I read to me. So it felt very nice that I finally got to explain a book to you.
Indicated at last.
Jordan will read a book. Jordan will read a book that Alex and I love, and she'll be like, "What's going on? It's fine." And we're like, "What are you talking about?" It's not fine. It's good.
Yeah. Or we'll
mostly
go
when
into
we're going to read a sequel or something.
oh
and
my
I'm like,
gosh.
What
2 weeks
happened
later.
in Betrayal Winter?
What happened? Guys, I'm 30%
Okay, but to be
into
fair,
book 2.
nothing happens in Betrayal of Winter, so that was not on me.
That is on you.
Nothing
True.
happens.
Nothing happens in your life.
This is true. That is true. Anyway,
Harrow.
putting my shortcomings aside, what were y'all's reactions? I mean, I got kind of live reactions, but looking back, what were your thoughts on the reveals at the end?
I think I just made it
Harrow?
worth it.
Yeah, of Harrow.
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 I mean,
Sarah,
I was
you
kind
go
of like
first.
you. Okay, yeah, Sarah, you first.
I just felt like there was too much happening.
Yeah, that's so
as soon as
chaotic.
the initial like reveal happens and the POV shift happens, I was just too happy that Gideon was back. Like, for anything else to register for me, I was like, yes, they're going to find a way. Something is going to happen. And then and I did really like the scenes in the river with, like you said, with Ortis, and when they're doing the poem, and like there's so much weird meta stuff in this series that you just kind of have to roll with it. And if you look for any kind of like internal reasoning for why it's happening and what is allowable and not allowable, like it kind of crumbles apart.
We also got it when we were in that bubble in the river. We met Dulcinea, the real Dulcinea, for the first time, because she was killed before Gideon started. Kithrea killed her before that. Mm-hmm. So we meet Dulcinea for the first time, which was cool. Yeah, all those reveals were
also regarding Harrow. I forgot that. So I had a friend who was really, really into this series, and he was talking to somebody else about a reveal in Harrow the Ninth, and he was complaining to me that they didn't get what the reveal is. Gideon's the second PV, but like they were using spoiler bars. But then he was like, "This person's like, they're just like being dumb, like they're not understanding what I'm saying." And like the way that he talked about it, I had already read Gideon, and he was trying not to spoil me, but he kind of unintentionally led me to the assumption. I was like, "Oh, I bet the second person POV is Gideon." And he was like, he tried to backtrack right away, and I was like, "Yeah, you kind of." So that was in my head that the second person POV was Gideon, but that almost made it worse because I was trying to, like, when you have like one puzzle piece but nothing around it, and you're trying to, like, what?
Yeah, it's
where does this?
I can't imagine thinking it's Gideon and then seeing the flashbacks.
I had assumed that she had done something to cut Gideon's memory out with the intention of trying to bring her back. Like, the reason that Gideon is gone from her memory, I had assumed, and especially because she has those letters for herself, and she says to keep Gideon's sword safe and don't let anybody else touch this. And I had assumed that she had somehow managed to tether her soul to something and that she was going to find a way to bring her back, but I did not know how that was going to happen.
Another thing that happened in Harrow, it was kind of a small thing, but Harrow goes, they like, the lictors go and destroy planets to get the energy to like do whatever to fight the resurrection beast. She goes to this planet. She's supposed to be like siphoning out the soul of the planet, and a ship shows up with Coronabeth, Judith, and Camilla, and there's a picture of Wake in the ship that they're in, and she sees it, and Wake looks like Gideon, and her nose starts bleeding and her ears start bleeding when she sees the picture. And I had no idea what that meant. I did not know who this I thought there was a picture of Gideon on the ship. Me too. I was like, why did they have a picture of just Gideon out of everyone?
So Gideon looks like Wake is the idea?
Yeah, she looks like Wake, and she has God's eyes, but they're not. Yeah. Yes.
I just remember, like, I wasn't exhausted, but my theories were going all over the place.
They were wild.
So much of that book that when I got to the last 20% and stuff started getting revealed to me, I was super excited that Gideon was back. I also like didn't realize how much I almost enjoyed her character, or like even missed her character. Then when we got to the end of Harrow, and I was like, oh my God, okay, this is awesome. So glad we get her voice back. But oh my God, I finished that book and I messaged Jordan, and then I was on literally YouTube and Reddit for like 2 hours, like the most random, like what happened and what did I just read videos. Like
I literally when I finished Nona, I think I went to Reddit and was like, explain Nona like I'm 5. Somebody explain what even happened.
I finished Harrow, so I finished it like roughly near the end of January. And all of February was a write-off. Like, I think I just...
I remember that. You didn't like...
You needed a recovery period.
Yeah, I was just like, oh man, I just can't focus on any of this. Like, that's why I gave Nona such a low rating.
I remember you were like, I can't... All the books I'm reading are not good. You were just like, I can't focus on any of them. Yes, Paul. I was trying to decipher whose eyeballs were whose throughout every book. Yeah,
it was
very stressful.
Then it gets worse in Nona when they start going inside other people's bodies. So then you have like they are the lictor, they have the soul, but now they're like projecting into someone else's body, and it becomes like the whole other layer of confusing body swap.
And that God has Electo's eyes and Electo has God's eyes, which is why Gideon has gold eyes and God does not, but she actually does have God's eyes because Electo is his cavalier. Bonkers.
This is why I'm excited to reread, though, because I feel like the outline of the whole story is pretty clear to me,
and now you can
like the general things, but it's like the little exactly. Like
I'm rewatching Haunting of Bly Manor with my wife right now, and we haven't watched it since it came out, which is 2020. And it's been really fun because, I mean, first of all, I just like that show. But I remember the really big reveals. Like, I remember blank is this, and this is kind of what's going on here. But so many of the little reveals are just, like, lost to me. So I'm, like, trying to fit the pieces back together. And I'll be like, wait, I know this is a clue, but what is this a clue to? So it's like, it's really, really fun to experience something again that way, where it's like, you do know where it's going, but you don't fully remember the details. So I feel like Lock Tomb will be like that for me too, where I'm like, wait. The eye color means something here, but why does it mean something?
It's a series that you can reread over and over and pick up on new stuff every time. It's great. Anything else on Harrow before we move on to Nona?
Harrow the Ninth is more confusing than Gardens of the Moon.
That's
Harrow the Ninth.
Gardens of the Moon was not confusing. Yeah. I stand by that too.
Easy.
And it's like a quarter of the length. So.
Of the length. And the most confusing part of any of these books is always the epilogue. Like you feel like you finally have some footing, and then something happens in the epilogue, and you're like, well, I thought I knew was now.
The Harrow epilogue is getting introduced to Nona, and you're like, who? And Camilla's there, and you're like, who the like what?
I was so confused by Nona to begin with, just because you open the book and even it's like books by Tamsin Muir, and it's Nona, and then the ninth is crossed out, and I was like, "What the hell? What does that even mean?"
The whole dramatis personae is like it has the dog she wants to invite to her birthday party. And then it has some of the lictors and stuff, but for Harrow's lictor, that was the second one. Damn it! It's just the dogs. Who else is on the dramatis personae? And then it's
didn't read it.
Oh, they're so good.
Invitation. Isn't it just her birthday invitation?
Because then it's all of the people of Blood of Eden that she would have.
Yes.
And then it just says, and you three, meaning Camilla, Palamides, and Pyrrha.
Yes, and I think the part that makes the beginning of Nona so confusing, I guess you'll give your little like summary of Nona, but at the end of Harrow, you don't know what has happened between that like push and pull between Harrow and Gideon. Like who ended up in whose body, whose soul is there, who made it out of the river, like what is the final product of that experience? And then like Alex said, you're not even really sure whose body Nona is at the beginning.
Yeah, at the end of Harrow, you see Harrow going to the tomb and laying down.
Yeah.
And that's all you see. So you just have you're like, why is Harrow there? How'd she get there? Like it's a whole thing. Always, Sarah, always. So my Nona recap. I'm trying to.
So Nona the Ninth.
Okay, so we start Nona. She's 6 months old. She's in a body. Camilla and Palamides are trying to figure out whose body she's in. They're staying in a safe house. Camilla and Palamides share a body where they alternate who's in charge. It's Camilla's body. Pyrrha DeVay is there in Gideon the First's body. They all live together. Harrow is a teacher's aide and she goes to school. Harrow can heal automatically and she understands all languages but cannot read or write. And we know that Camilla and Palamides saved Pyrrha and Harrow's body, because we later learn that Nona is in Harrow's body. They were saved. They were rescued by Camilla and Palamides. But no one knows who Nona is, and they're trying to figure it out. And she has to tell Camilla every morning what her dreams were. They are working with the Blood of Eden to try to get into the locked tomb but we don't really know why. Everyone's names are wild because Nona literally translates all of them. So there's people like Hot Sauce and Born in the Morning.
Which I didn't even think about. I thought these were just like, kid nicknames that they've given each other, but that fan theory is way better than
so good.
my assumption.
Well, because like crown is what she calls Corona Beth, and a corona is a crown. Things like that. It's so good. There is a resurrection beast that is over the planet that is basically chilling there and causing all necromancers to go crazy, which
Real
is why.
quick.
Yes.
Maybe in your laptop hard drive of art, this was covered. I did not look, but what do you guys picture the resurrection beasts to look like?
Pause.
Like
there is fan art in that album.
Oh, okay.
Giant beasts in the sky.
Can you?
I just kind of picture them as like
I can, right?
the dragon from Dragon Ball Z.
Shenron.
Yeah, Shenron.
they do.
I kind of pictured what are they called?
My slumber.
What are the things called in the first Avengers movie that they send down? The kind of like that kind of like undulate.
The big centipede things. I don't know what they're called.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
That's kind of what I pictured, but at like a giant scale.
Actually, me too. I've definitely kind of pictured that too. Yeah.
Yeah,
I did send some pictures in our group chat.
Oh,
I
it was
don't know
mainly
how to put them
in Nona when they were like circling the planet or whatever. That I pictured Shinron. Before that, I did kind of picture like I don't see any. Oh, in the
this
Discord.
is horrifying.
Yeah, they're scary. Well, because there's not really a description of them. The descriptions are always just they always look different and they're terrifying to behold.
This is very scary.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't want an adaptation of this.
I was about to put it up.
That's not what I wanted.
That one's too bright. Maybe I can do the other one.
Do the darker one.
There we go.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
For the record, that's not what I pictured. Thank God.
You're just like,
my brain could not have come up with that on my own.
I'm picturing like
this one
cloud
kind of looks like a
hippos.
Demogorgon, so that one
It does. The first
Picturing,
one,
like,
the
elephants
sketch
made
looks
of
like
clouds
a
in the
Demogorgon
sky.
That's much better.
Yes, the blue orb was the resurrection beast, which is why all of the necromancers were going nutso. And the resurrection beast was talking through Judith, which is why Nona she hears Judith going nuts. She like starts blabbering on, and then later she mentions to Camilla like, "Oh, when Judith said blah blah blah," and Camilla was like, "Judith didn't say anything; she was just screaming," and it's because she can understand all languages, so she can understand the resurrection beast. So the resurrection beast is talking to Nona through Judith. Judith is she was Captain Judith Deuteros from the first book. She is being held captive by the Blood of Eden because she is a necromancer, and the Blood of Eden hates all necromancers. Then Ianthe arrives with there's like a broadcast that goes out, and Ianthe's there with Gideon's body, and they have like a broadcast that's like anyone associated with the 9 houses needs to turn themselves in, blah blah blah, because they're looking.
What do they call Gideon? Prince
Kiriona Gaia.
There we go, Kiriona Gaia.
They're trying to find Harrow's body. They don't know where she went.
Mm-hmm.
And the end is hard to describe. But basically, they're trying to. The whole 6th house is there, and they're trying to get them all to the 9th house. Gideon helps, and they all travel through the river with Nona's help because she's super powerful. They all travel through the river to the 9th house, where they go into the tomb, and they open the tomb. Alecto wakes up, kisses Nona, which switches their souls back, and then Harrow swears an oath to Alecto. Alecto then goes and kills God. John.
It's Freaky Friday.
Literally.
Harrow tries to swear to Alecto, but Alecto really swears to Harrow once she finds out who Harrow is.
yeah, she swears to Harrow because when she kisses her, she doesn't know how kisses work, so she says, "Isn't this how meat loves meat?" And she bites her lip, and so she bleeds. When she gets the blood in her mouth, she's
She
like,
can taste
"Oh, you're a descendant of Anastasia. I swore an oath to Anastasia."
Yeah. So I guess the biggest reveal is that it was Alecto in Harrow's body the whole time.
Yeah.
And Harrow was in the tomb, which is why Gideon is so hostile to Nona when she wakes up.
And Alecto has
Wait.
been.
Why would that make Gideon hostile?
Because she wants Harrow back.
She wants Harrow back, and Nona's in Harrow's body.
Yeah.
So and
So
when
Gideon knows.
Clarification. Okay.
Everyone knows it's not Harrow.
Okay.
So the entire so I know that they've been in Alecto's been in Harrow's body the entire time for the series. So does that mean we never really saw Harrow's personality at all the entire time?
I don't think Alecto was all the way in there. It was like a piece of her was in there from when she went into the tomb.
I was confused. All right.
She was haunted when in Harrow when she's told like you have somebody haunting you. It was Alecto the whole time. Alecto was haunting her since she went into the tomb the first time, but she's able to take over when Harrow goes into the river.
It's kind of like in Yu-Gi-Oh, how like Yugi
just
is
like
just
Yu-Gi-Oh.
by himself.
And
like when he has and then he's Yami Yugi, and then he's like an Egyptian pharaoh.
And he
kinda
grows
like
taller.
Yeah.
Oh, Tanner, how could I forget? All of our flashbacks in this one are, well, they're not really flashbacks. They're dreams that Nona is having where Harrow is talking to God and God is explaining what happened. And basically what happened is God and his friends discovered necromancy and they're using it basically to like heal people. But the earth is dying. And so they're trying to get everyone cryogenically frozen and shot out into space. But all the rich people are like, no, just us. And God gets mad and nukes all of Earth, which gives him all his powers. And he's basically telling Harrow that throughout the whole book.
He wants to kill the rich people. So in the end, he says, "Fuck it, I'll kill everyone because at least the rich people will die." And then the rich people get away anyway.
I love that Jordan treats this as if she's a character in this universe because she knows this guy is just named John, and she's like God. Consistently, she's like, "Well, we're in God's perspective."
This is God's world. I'm just living in it.
This was the reveal I did not know.
I just discovered it.
Until I read the wiki. I was like, what? Alecto's a resurrection beast? Did not get that.
Yeah, there's 9 resurrection beasts. When God killed Earth, he nuked Earth, which released the Thanergy from Earth, which allowed him to then, he kept gathering power. He killed all 9 planets in the system. And each planet's soul became a resurrection beast. He took on most of the power, but he put a little bit of it into Alecto's body, which looks like his favorite Barbie doll. And so Alecto is basically a portion of the soul of Earth. So she is a portion of a resurrection beast.
I want you to make like a YouTube series, Jordan, where you just walk up to people in the streets of New York and be like, "Hi, let me tell you about my favorite series," and you just spoil the whole series. Like, you just keep going. Like you rehearse saying, "Oh, you do the cow wall, you do the resurrection beast is actually all the 9 planets die." You just go wild, and you just see how long until they walk away.
Paul, when we were talking about doing this stream, Alex and Kyle were both like, "I don't remember a lot of the book," and I was like, "Do you at least remember the cow wall?" And they were like, "Cow wall."
I was like, "Wait, what?"
Cows have sunsets.
Cows have feelings. Cows form relationships.
Yeah, watch the sunset, man. I like the part, like, this is where I find the book the funniest, is all of John's parts, because like he's a total, like, he's such a bad person, but you see how he like made the decisions and how he was justifying them to himself. And then sometimes he'll say things that are so funny. Like the part where Nona or Harrow or whatever is like, "What's the internet?" And he's like, "See, I did make a utopia." That's why the entire series.
It's so good.
And then when everyone's talking about the cows and they won't let the cows go, he's like, "I should have just killed the conspiracy theorists." Nobody.
I need somebody to do fan art of the cow wall. Like, is it grisly or is it just like bones? Or is it like meaty? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, Nona is the book. We have a big tonal shift because Nona is 6 months old and doesn't remember anything. And so she's just very wholesome. The bunny content we need. she's just very wholesome, and she just wants to get along with her friends at school. She's just so the tone is just completely different. But we're still getting a bunch of characters that are like, we're getting hints of a bunch of characters that we've seen previously, and we're getting hints that she's in Harrow's body, and we get those hints pretty early on. Like we get the hint that her hair doesn't stop growing; it's growing too fast because Ianthe changed her hair follicles when they were doing the lobotomy. We get a bunch of these hints of whose body she's in from the beginning. And we also know Camilla, Palamides, Pyrrha, all of them. And so it's like you're trying to piece it together, but Nona doesn't even know who she is, let alone what the whole broad picture is. So it's just so confusing.
So I wanted to talk about, because originally this was to be 3 books, and this whole book was going to be like the first part of Alecto the Ninth.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be... I don't know if you guys will. You probably will be like, yeah, it totally justifies its own book. Did you guys think it like held its own as an individual book and it was a good decision, or do you wish it was just a longer third book?
It's really hard to know without seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
My intention is to trust the author, especially when she's already gained my trust of like,
plot structure,
like plot. Like she's really good at plotting, and I just think if she felt she needed all of this, I have the like idea to like give her that leash, but like a lot of Nona didn't work for me that much because I didn't like, I just felt like it was just, so like I don't know, like for my personal enjoyment, I might have enjoyed a trilogy more, but that doesn't make it better. So it just really depends. But I do think that we were able to get way more in depth about what's going on with Nona, and I think that will have a lot of ramifications for Alecto in Alecto the Ninth. So I feel like it's time well used, but we won't know till later, I guess.
Well, we still have so many unknowns too at the end of Nona. There's characters that weren't really explained.
We'll have unknowns at the end of the series.
Just be like... So we do get, I feel like Nona, we get a much, much better grasp on the world as a whole. And I think that Alecto is going to be a lot more like present day, all of the ramifications of everything that's been going on. Whereas every other book, we've had a lot of flashbacks and stuff to just even understand the world itself. I feel like we have a pretty good grasp on the world at this point, but there's still so many unknowns of like the angel, the teacher at the school. We hardly really know who she is. We just know she's part of the Blood of Eden. There's like a lot of people like that we just don't really know who they are for a lot of the books.
Also, just like there had to have been areas of expansion to make it another book. And so I wonder, like, I feel like my hunch is in the original outline, the stuff with John was going to either just be like a monologue or it was going to be revealed late in the series in like shorter amounts. And so being able to see like what happened in longer increments, I think is going to really enhances the depth of the story overall.
And I feel like as an antagonist.
Yeah. And so I feel like that is something that we probably wouldn't have gotten if it was just a trilogy. So
like you can understand why the people who have spent 10,000 years with him also want to kill him after seeing everything that he did and all the things that happened. Nona the Ninth was like Wolves of the Kala for me. I'm just going to bring it back to the Dark Tower again. It's like a total side step into this small town. It's not a small town, it's a city, but like a group of people that, you get to know intimately who don't really have much to do with what we have been given so far. Mm-hmm. And I think, like Kyle said, it's either going to work for you or not. Like, I like that. And it's one of the things I like about Stephen King too, is that when they just go off and talk about nothing, like just regular, ordinary people's lives, I like it. I really like that about Nona. And up until reading Nona, I loved Gideon and Harrow, and I wanted to know what was going to happen to them. But it wasn't until I read Nona that I really even realized that there's still so many people alive on these planets. Right. There's consequences, and the things that they're doing when they're going onto planets and sucking out their souls and ending life for all these people. Like, there are people who have real lives who matter to other people.
And you don't kind of just assumed that like everybody was a necromancer. Like I hadn't really thought about it much, but if you had asked me at the end of Harrow, I would have just been like, I guess like just necromancers still live, and like maybe they're like servants.
20 characters.
Yeah.
There's 20 living people in this one.
Well, and
Right,
like
I thought it was pockets of necromancers, like just the houses, and that was it. And there's not a ton of resources, and there's not a lot of people left. And then you're like, oh wait, actually, there's billions of people.
and there's a lot, also like a very strange like dichotomy with the world that Nona's living in. Like she'll just like casually mention that there's like shootings in the street and that they have like sniper barriers on the windows of their house, and like the world they're living in is so dark, but she's just so happy because she's 6 months old and has friends and loves Camilla, Calamities, and Pyrrha.
Hasn't had a tantrum in 3 months.
Yeah, she's like doing really well.
So
she gets to swim with jellyfish.
In Nona, Pyrrha is Gideon, or is
Pyrrha was Gideon's cavalier. In Harrow,
no, yeah, I know that, but in Nona specifically, who is the consciousness?
She's Pyrrha, but in Gideon's body.
Gideon died fighting the resurrection beast in Harrow. Pyrrha took what was left of Pyrrha in him took over his body.
This was the shit that broke my brain in Harrow.
That
was the exact
because that means that all of these, presumably, all these Cavaliers' consciousnesses are somewhere inside those bodies, like just being suppressed. And
it's wild.
Well, you kind of get a little. You get kind of some of that at the beginning of Harrow when Ianthe is still or no, I think it was at the end of Gideon when Ianthe first becomes a lictor and she's like trying to fight back against Naberius, and like you see a little bit of that, but I think it's when Gideon dies and Pyrrha takes over. You're like, she's been there the whole time.
I almost want like a chart of each individual, like at the beginning of the book, like an individual body, and just it being like, this is
who was in this body at what time,
literally, and then I could just be like, okay,
honestly, every page just has the bodies and who's in it.
Like, you need one of those kids' crafts where you can like pull the thing down and it changes color. Like, this is the outline of the body at this page. This is
like whoever they're saying is talking is not who's talking.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh.
Yes, that happens to me all the time when I have my contacts in, so I can only imagine being in somebody else's body.
Calamities and Camilla are so adorable in this whole thing. There's a part where Nona wakes up. Pyrrha's missing, so Nona is left on her own to record her dream because Camilla's like doing something else, and she accidentally listens to the recordings that Camilla and Calamities were sending each other back and forth because that's the only way they can communicate, and it was so sad and so touching, and they're amazing. I love them so much.
Agreed.
Absolutely agree. And also, now that I've thought about this pushing his glasses thing up, that is such a brilliant character move. Like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, Tamsin Muir just knows where it's at, because so many people would not consider that. But I'm like, that is, as soon as you know it, you're like, oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
I never caught that when I was reading it.
Yeah.
I don't think I did either.
Dang, Tanner.
So there were all of the John chapters started with like John and then like Bible verses where it's like John blah 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 with some numbers. And some amazing people on Twitter did some code cracking, and using the code that those numbers make, it says the tower has reactivated. The ARC version was different. The ARC said the tower wants John Gaius. We get the briefest snippet of said tower that we have no idea what it is. But when they go into the river, they all notice that something's wrong with the river. They don't really go into detail of what's wrong with it, but something's wrong with the river, and there's a big tower. And that's really all we get of what it is. So I think that's going to be also a big part of Alecto. Because Alecto at the end also points out something about, she's like, oh, there's something, or like the river is still not fixed or something. So I think when John did all of this resurrection, he messed up the river somehow. But I have no idea what that means.
This is like 100% going to be the series that I reread leading up to the release of book 4, read book 4, and then feel like I immediately need to go back and
reread all of it.
Be like, what happened? Because there's I feel like I'm going to feel exactly the same way.
Yeah.
As I did when I finished Harrow,
That's what I did with A Dance with Dragons when it came out. I reread leading up to A Dance with Dragons. I read A Dance with Dragons in one day, and I just started the series over, and I'm back there.
There were.
I don't know if she likes it. I really need to know if she's a fan, or if she's at least read it. Like, even if she doesn't like it.
Who?
She read The Dark Tower. Tamsin Muir.
Oh, You know, I think she would like it.
There were 2 moments where Tamsin Muir dropped some big quotes for like she's been telling us all along. Excuse me. And Gideon says something to Harrow, and Harrow responds, "At the end of the night, the locked tomb is me." So she says from the beginning, like she has Alecto in her. And then when Judith regains consciousness in Nona the Ninth, she says Harrow, and Nona says no, and I never was, which can be read a few different ways, but basically she's like, she's like, I was never just Harrow, because she was 200 dead children and Alecto, and now Harrow, kind of. But also, John tried to take in Alecto to make himself more powerful and could not. But Harrow was able to hold her soul in her body for 6 months, and it's because Alecto is like a conglomerate of billions of people, and Harrow is also a conglomerate of a lot of souls. So she has more capacity to hold all of Alecto inside of her.
Why was it only 6 months?
Because her body started dying. Like her arm was literally falling off by the time they got to the tomb. Because Alecto's body her soul is just too much for anyone to hold.
But wasn't she always in Harrow for like her whole
But just a portion. She wasn't the main.
I see what you're saying. Okay, yeah, gotcha.
But yeah, like John tried to take her in and almost instantly died.
I feel like, you know, when there's like a fantasy show or like a sci-fi show or whatever, and they have one character that's just the audience insert, and it's just like the other characters explaining shit about the world so that the audience knows, and you're like, wow, this guy's really a dumbass, isn't he? I'm that dumbass. Like, I'm here for everybody else so that they can get clarification.
This makes sense now why Nona knows all these languages. She's got souls of everybody in there. Yep. So someone's got to
and they keep saying that she can heal faster than any other lictor. She can heal faster than God, and it's because Alecto is more powerful than God.
Oh my gosh.
That part is wild.
Reread Nona.
She has like her third tantrum or whatever it is, and she just breaks her own feet in her own hand.
Yeah. She like rips herself out of the manacles, and I was just like, literally her whole hand comes off, and I was like, girl, what?
Also a big moment when Hot Sauce shoots her in the head.
Mm-hmm. And then everyone's like, she's a necromancer zombie.
Necromancer zombie.
Necromancer zombies. The short story in the Locked Tomb world.
I really like the part. I think it's Camilla who says it. No, maybe not. Maybe it's the angel. One of them says to Nona, like, you have to go back your kid and see your friends. Like, kids are so forgiving. And then it's like, and that's how Nona knew that she understood nothing about children.
I remember that one. Okay.
I was going to say something else and I forgot. Another big kind of reveal was when Camilla and Palamedes combined and basically did the perfect lictorhood and became Paul. Because Palamedes is a genius. So also like the fact that somebody has figured it out and done it, but that because Anastasia died very quickly after the resurrection because she tried to do a perfect, she had the theory, she just didn't execute it. And so that's why God kept saying like, oh, it's not possible. See, Anastasia tried.
Was Anastasia the nun as well?
Yeah, she was the founder of the Ninth House.
Right.
So I wonder if, like, that seems to me as something they're setting up for the final book to be somebody else does that too. Do we think maybe John tries it? Or like, I don't think Gideon and Harrow would do that. But
well, Gideon's dead. Like, quote unquote dead. Her body's dead, but her soul is there. So maybe they would try.
That's true. Yeah.
I feel like the only way that John's going to die is through Alecto. I feel like she's going to have to try to absorb him. And
the end of Nona, she stabs him. So like, we don't really know what comes of that. So
he was molecules at the end of Harrow.
Yeah. And he
And he was
survived
just fine.
that.
To bring back Kyle's Dragon Ball Z references, he's basically Cell. Like if there's anything left of him, he's just gonna reform into something even stronger.
Basically, this series is anime, is what we're figuring.
Right. This is Dark Tower and
Dragon
this is
Dark
Ball.
Tower and Dragon Ball Z English.
Yeah,
It's
Dragon Ball Tower.
Tamsinmir's fan fiction Dragon Tower.
This we really cracked the code. Everybody should watch the stream because we've actually figured it out.
Dark Ball.
That's definitely the title Gideon would pick if she had the option.
Nobody would watch a show called Dark Ball.
Get out of here. I would in a heartbeat. Yeah, this series is just bonkers. And I have zero Tamsinmir has given one hint, and all she said is there's a wedding in Electo. No one knows whose wedding or anything, but there is a wedding in Electo.
Off the wall like Noodle the dog gets married.
There's a lot of predictions that it's Ianthe and Gideon, which will make me want to. I will rip the pages out of the book if that happens. I will yeet the book into a fire. That can't happen. I don't think it's going to be Gideon and Harrow because I don't think
also we all know that Ianthe would only marry her twin. So
this is true. This is so true. This is so true. The names she gives Corona in this book are so good. So good. Ianthe has the best nicknames. She calls Gideon Gonad.
The way that what's her name, Mora Quirk, does Ianthe's voice is also she's like the most affected accent ever.
Yeah. Mora Quirk is so.
I listened to this and I was like, Mora Quirk is really good. And then I listened to her in other books, and it's not like she's suddenly bad, but like when a narrator finds their series, like she's good. She's good in Red Rising, and she's good in
Red Rising.
In Empire's Ruin, which are the other things I've listened to, but I'm like, no, like Locked Tomb, she's there for it, and that's like so perfect when you get that
she is perfect for this. I really liked so many funny parts of Nona. I love the part when someone tells Corona that she's just tits and ass, and she's like, no, I'm tits and ass and an excellent sword hand. Thank you.
There's so many good quips, and it's always funnier because most of the time, like Nona just doesn't even get it. Like she's just like, yeah. So it just makes it that much funnier.
Yes, like the running gag that Pyrrha is their pimp, and Nona's just like, what does this mean? Everybody just assumes that she's like policing poor Camilla, and this is Camilla's fate in life is just amazing. Oh goodness.
Nona, like for being 6 months old, she knows a surprising amount of things, and I think it's just because of like the desolate world. Because one of the kids is a literal drug dealer, and she's always just like, "I can find you drugs." Like, she's just like, "Do you need help finding drugs?" Like,
I know where to get them.
There was something where she was like, I thought maybe you could use this as drugs to get high, and she like gives him something. I don't remember what it was, but there's like so many of those moments where I'm like, Nona, why do you know that?
Why do you have this? Why do you have access to these things?
Oh, another thing, Nona really likes float. She always wants to go float in the ocean. It keeps her from having her tantrum. She needs to do it once a week, and it's because the tomb is surrounded by salt water. And so Electo is always in salt water, and so she feels comfortable in the ocean.
I did not think about that.
Wow.
That's interesting.
One thing that I still am not sure I understand: why didn't Gideon die when they sucked all the baby souls out?
Because she also has some powers. She doesn't have necromantic powers, but her body is stronger because she's God's child.
Okay, so it's just like stronger DNA. She just built different.
That was my assumption. I think that's right, but I'm not totally sure. A lot of stuff that we don't really get explained, but that people have made guesses for is like, how did they get Gideon's body, and how did they get Gideon's soul into Gideon's body? Like John did all of that in the background in between books, so we don't really get an explanation for that. we know that Gideon's body was taken. Like, I think Blood of Eden had it, and then it was taken from them. But I don't know. I still don't know.
Sleeper hit.
Maybe if I convince Chris that the Locked Tomb is just like Dragon Ball Z, he'll read it.
I'm so sure he won't like it. I mean, no way, like,
I had to make a guess.
For context, Sarah, Chris doesn't read.
What an excellent place to start. So if you review this, I'm just going to say it's Dark Tower meets Dragon Ball Z, and then everybody who reads it is going to send me the angry. Like, you lie.
You'd be like, oh, my bad. I forgot to tell you it's also kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh.
Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Z, Dark Tower, and Tumblr.
That's the new tagline. Jake will come out with a 1-star review of Harrow the Ninth. This tagline is ridiculous. There's no Yu-Gi-Oh. There's no Dragon Ball Z. There's literally not any towers. I'm sad Jake will never see that. Can we just send that to him at some point?
Yeah, I think he should just watch this whole stream, even though he hasn't read them.
He should.
Maximum chaos.
Just see if he can even pick up kind of what's going on. Anything else anyone really wanted to talk about with Nona, or any of these big reveals, or like predictions for Electo?
I have no predictions.
I have no predictions.
I'm protecting my sense of identity by having no predictions.
Yeah, I have nothing.
The series is like the total Wild West. I've just gone into each book just bracing myself or whatever, and it always surprises me.
I think another big reveal for Nona that is kind of hinted at throughout all the books, what with all the like pop culture references, but like it finally gets confirmed in Nona, is just that this is all based off of like Earth and the real 9 planets of our sun. Yeah. Like we don't really know that until Nona, and then when John finally like starts talking about his life and stuff, and he's just like, I was a scientist and we accidentally discovered and we accidentally discovered necromancy and we caused a nuclear disaster. Like it was like it finally like put it into context that like these 9 houses are based on the 9 planets that are based on the lictors that were the scientists working with God and like all this stuff.
Now I can just imagine Ianthe like screaming at Harrow, Pluto's not even a planet.
For sure.
She definitely does. Also with Ianthe, at the end of the book, when they're in the tomb, Ianthe's trying to stop them from going in there because Gideon tries to convince her that God told him to come here and get Electo, and she's like, no, because then he's going to be more powerful and we don't want that, because she's trying to like control him in some sort of way. And she gets shot with a herald bullet, which I guess is like a special bullet that they use to shoot the resurrection beasts or necromancers or something. I'm not sure, but she's like incapacitated at the end of the book, and I don't know what those bullets do, so
that
same. That's how I felt preparing for the stream.
That's how I felt typing up y'all's recap. I was typing the recap and I was like, I have no idea if this
I just
even
really
makes
wish
sense.
I had waited to read Nona. Like I just like my brain was just like, Jesus, take the wheel, you know? Like, I wasn't ready. I wasn't
honestly,
your brain wasn't there.
Honestly, the stream has just made me just want to reread, but now I'm afraid of rereading too early.
Yeah.
Well, you can always reread twice.
That's opportunity cost.
Very true.
Unlimited rereads.
He hasn't even read Stormlight Archive, Jordan. Relax.
This is true. This is true.
I gave you guys the option last night.
Yeah.
So
next
like, we start Sword of Kaigen or Stormlight Archive, and Jordan and I were both immediately like Sword of Kaigen, and he's like, wow, I didn't expect that.
I was like, wow, that's a total opposite of what I
If you don't like Stormlight Archive, I'll be sad, but I'll understand. But if you don't like Sword of Kaigen, I'm like, I just like, who hurt you and why are you?
Why are you the way that you are? I think you're gonna like both though. I think you should do Way of Kings next.
I could do that. I'm enjoying Sword of Kaigen so far.
Nice. Sarah, you've read Sword of Kaigen, right?
I have, and I like it.
That's what I thought.
All
right.
Well, I do have
what a book.
One last tidbit. I have this like the fandom open up right here. and I was scrolling down just to see what was on here. But apparently, the trivia for Harrow the Ninth is that the artist Tommy Arnold, who does all the cover art, apparently broke his right hand before the release of Harrow the Ninth. So to make his deadline and not delay the release, he did the entire cover art in his non-dominant hand, which is crazy. That's like one of my favorite cover.
It's such a good
ever.
cover.
Yeah,
That's wild.
Jordan, do you have the Fairy Loot editions of this book?
No.
I actually own none of these books physically. I really need to get on that.
This is these are on my Christmas list. I want them because they're still available on regular hardcover and not, pretty Fairy Loot hardcover.
I tend to get most of them used, which means like newer books. I usually just have audio or ebooks unless like they're like a favorite author. But I'm like, man, I should get these books.
These ones are.
I have them all in hardcover, but
yeah. And also, the other thing is when the last one does come out, they'll re-release like.
Yeah.
The sad thing is they'll re-release it, but then they'll open it to like the people who have already purchased the other ones. So it'll be like, you can have these first.
There'll be some $5 anime adaptation of this, and they'll just put that on the covers.
Now an original series.
This would be a wild adaptation. I think I would like it. I would prefer it as anime. I think you could do it either way, but I just like anything. Anything
I prefer anime too.
I always prefer anime because I don't think many people do a great job with space movies.
Yeah.
And I just think with how wild this whole the whole premise and the different settings we go to and stuff, I just feel like I think it would look better in it.
Right. And different people's voices and different people's eye colors.
The reveal,
there's a lot of
the reveals I think would be more, the execution would be better in anime. When you're like going back and going through people's memories and stuff.
Agreed. I would like that.
Man. Whenever I talk about this series, I just cannot imagine what
reread.
George just finished Nona today, and it's like going back to getting it.
Like Tamsin Muir's brain is bonkers.
It is
absolutely wild. Especially like when you do a reread, seeing how much of this she hints at from the very first page of Gideon is just like she knows what she's doing, and it's wild.
Right? Isn't it her debut novel?
Yes.
Yeah, she only has these 3 books and then one novella.
She has,
I was gonna say, as much as I'm excited for Electo, I'm also just like really curious, like what she'll do after. It's kind of like Christopher Rocchio. Like, I really want the end of Sun Eater, but I'm also just like, you have all of this experience. You're so young. You've done this whole well plotted out crazy series, and now like it's just free reign. And I'm just like excited for that.
Dude, that's how I feel about Ken Liu too. Like,
well, Ken Liu is a little different because he doesn't want to do obviously big fantasy anymore. So, but
if he does another big series, that'd be be really cool.
I know that she's done some interviews and stuff. But I've never.
Jordan, you should reach out.
There's an interview
for sure.
There's an interview.
I don't think she interacts with. I think. Yeah, I don't think she interacts with the fans. I think she's come out and said like, I don't interact with fans.
Oh, hoity-toity, huh?
Yeah, she's like,
But she just goes on the Reddits and just laughs.
Yeah.
Like, wow, these people.
The complete opposite of Neil Gaiman, who's like always on Tumblr and Reddit answering people's
Brandon
predictions.
Sanderson.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I'm very excited for Electo, and it breaks my heart that we still know nothing.
My guess is 2024. It seems like 2024 is the
2024 is the year.
Like all of these big authors were like, you know what, 2024.
Princess Floralinda is really good. I believe it's also narrated by Moira Quirk. It's very fun. It's short.
This is so not related, but this is a thought I just had. The Secret Project 4 for Sanderson just came out, and it's not narrated by Michael Kramer. And I saw something on Reddit, in the Brandon Sanderson Reddit, that was like, is Michael Kramer okay? And it was like this guy was like, I went to start the new Secret Project, and it wasn't Michael Kramer. Did anybody hear any updates about his health or anything? Like, no, like they just had this bizarre idea to get somebody else one time.
They're like, he must, if he didn't narrate the Sanderson book, he must be dead. The only option.
Good Lord.
Yeah, I don't even know. Tamsin Muir, I could see being the kind of author that's like, all right, I finished Sherlock Tomb. I'm done with my writing career now. Like, I can totally see her just being
I can't just because she's been writing fan fiction and like stuff like that since she was like in high school. If you like read her interviews, so I feel like she's just like deeply embedded as an author. Whereas like some people, they have like one story idea and they just work on that. But it just seems like she's.
I just wonder what her voice,
writer.
her like author voice is like outside of this type of. It's like any time that an author has a series, like one main series like this, where I'm just like, I wonder what it'd be like if you wrote something totally different. Like, would it be too similar?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I'm on Archive of Our Own, I'm like, what is Tamsin Muir's suit?
I would kill to read.
Me too.
I would sacrifice a child to know what her AO3
200 babies.
200 children, so I can know what her AO3 is.
Right?
I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
I don't either.
Archive of Our Own is the like major fan fiction archive. That's where the majority of people write fan fiction. That is where they post it. And it was actually founded by Naomi Novik. So she is the person who founded it. And her username, because she has written hundreds of fan fiction across like many fandoms, and hers is public. Like everybody knows what her name is. And like there are a bunch of really famous authors who have written fan fiction, like Shelley Parker Chan, Tamsin Muir. There are a ton of people who have written fan fiction and mainstream fiction, and some of them have it pretty public and it's easy enough to like figure out even if they're not like super vocal about it. And some people are a locked tomb like Tamsin Muir and you just don't know. And so some people, meaning me and apparently Jordan, are desperate to know what it is and what they have written.
I want to know even just like what fandom she writes in.
Well,
like
that's interesting because like she could be an Adrian Tchaikovsky or she could be a Stephen King, right? Where Stephen King, like he's like, I'm gonna do Richard Bachman, and people were like, you Richard Bachman? And he's like, fine, I'm Richard Bachman.
Fine.
Whereas Adrian Tchaikovsky, as soon as he writes something, you're like, this is Adrian. This is Adrian. Are you sure this isn't not Adrian Tchaikovsky? This could be anybody that's not. What, really? So like those are the two spectrums. And so I'm interested to know like
where she falls.
Yep.
Somebody might be reading her fan fiction being like, this sounds a lot like Tamsin Muir. I wonder if I asked her about it or if she's just like so different nobody's ever guessed.
What if she's writing Dragon Ball Z fan fiction?
I love
it. She's actually writing the season 1 of Dark Ball.
She watches this shirt and she's like, gotta scrap it.
Oh, they got me.
We're absurd people.
We are.
Now I gotta go see some Dragon Ball Z fan fiction. That's what I'm doing after this.
Going on the hunt.
Trunks and Gohan fan fiction.
There is fan fiction for anything. You can find anything. I was just on there earlier today. So
if Morkirk was writing Dragon Ball Z fan fiction, it would definitely be Chi-Chi and Bulma. Like that is what this is about.
One time Bookborn was talking about like Harry Potter fan fiction, and she was just like going off to me about like the different, like I don't even know them, but like just like saying the names so quickly, like it was just like
Drarry, Dramini.
Yeah. I'm just like saying them, and I was like, could you just slow down? I don't know any of this stuff.
That was my introduction into fan fiction, was Drarry fan fiction. So I've read a lot of Drarry fan fiction.
I have trouble with fan fiction. I don't know. It's hard for me.
I've never read.
I read. So here, okay. Here's a story because I'm not going to talk about fan fiction very often. So this is an exclusive. So there is a so Preston Jacobs is a really big A Song of Ice and Fire fan, and he does a lot of analysis that I think are Looney Tunes Banana Town about A Song of Ice and Fire. Like I think Preston Jacobs is wrong about 99.9% of things, but he's very smart, very very like interesting theories, and he started compiling different he asked people to do different sample chapters of Winds of Winter, and then he compiled them together as like he's rewriting Winds of Winter, or he's writing Winds of Winter, but with like different people contributing, and he's just like editing them together. And I read the first chapter, and he gets like a random minor character, like he forgets who they are, like he just erases them from continuity. I'm like, this guy's an amateur. I'm done.
That's hilarious.
So can you do your fan fiction version of Winds of Winter?
Because the thing is, it's actually really good. It's written well. Like I understand why people are liking it, but I'm just like, but he deleted Carl Vance. Like Carl Vance is the heir to this place, and I'm like, how dare you be such a noob, Preston Jacobs? So.
I totally remember who Carl Vance is.
Nobody does. I'm the only person. But the point is, Preston Jacobs could have remembered.
Things you should be the editor for this fan fiction project.
Yeah, you should have called me up. That's all I'm saying. So, I don't know. The thing is, if I read fan fiction of a series I wasn't as invested in, I might like it more, but I would never want to read fan fiction of something I wasn't as invested in. So it's like a catch-22.
Yeah.
I feel like you also kind of have to be a romance fan to like fan fiction. Like it's not
Yeah, I'm
all
sure-
romance
I'm
based,
sure
but
that's a lot of it.
Most
lot of it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
there we go.
Lock Tomb, great series, best series. Any last things before we get off?
I actually have a question because you keep saying best series, and I know that it's not Alex's favorite, but he really liked it. But Sarah, I actually don't know. Like, do you think this would make your top 10, like top 5? Like, you haven't really thought about it yet?
I think right now it probably makes my top 10. I guess depending on how Electo goes, will determine where it will
I feel the
be
same way.
in that top 10.
It's nowhere near my top 10. I'm so sorry, guys. I really like it. It's just not there.
Yeah. Well,
I
mean,
flop back
feel
and
like-
forth between this as my number 1 and The Realm of the Underlings is my number 1.
I will say,
I just go back and
might
forth.
bump it up. Might pump those rookie numbers up. You know.
Yeah.
I
think
think you'll like it a lot
and
more on a
having
reread.
Electo, because I do
Yeah.
think each book makes the ones that come before it better, and so I feel
agree.
like
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, Kyle, I think you'll like it a lot more on a reread.
It's
My
just
brain
got
knows
me,
what
I'm
it's in
excited to
for.
reread.
it's got me in my Dark Tower feels. It's the only series that has ever felt like that to me. So I'm loving it.
Yeah, I totally see how similar it is to Dark Tower now that you say it, but I would have never
yeah.
made that connection.
I haven't finished Dark Tower yet. One day.
Yeah, now Jordan's like, ooh, do I have to go back and try this again?
I mean, I remember a lot up to book 2, so I would just have to start at 3, but we'll finish it one day. Anyway, thank you guys for indulging me.
For your information packets.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your hard
Yeah,
work.
thanks for
There was honestly no joke my pleasure. I had so much
You know how
typing all of that up.
sometimes after like a live stream, because like for people who don't schedule live streams, it's usually done over Discord, at least in our corner. And so we'll have like a group chat for the live stream, and then afterwards people will leave it. Just like leave this one here so I have the resources.
Oh yeah, I need.
Yeah,
That's
so
why I
true.
pinned all those messages so I
Yeah.
can come back to them. I was like, I need to share these next time somebody reads them because I asked them to. I can be like, okay, now that you finished, here's my analyses.
Save them for the Electo chat.
That one thing I did send though, if you guys didn't read it, that breaks down the Nona epilogue.
I was gonna read
I
it. but
started
didn't. Yeah.
yeah.
It
was
goes
like, wow,
really
this is
far
brilliant.
into like the biblical ties and stuff. It's crazy.
It does.
We scheduled this during a Brandon Sanderson release. Like I could only read so much in one
That's
day.
fair. That's fair. Totally fair. All right, guys. Well, thank you, and thank you everyone that watched and joined in. This was a lot of fun. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
See everyone.